All right, we're going to jump into it here and start off with the first episode of the safety podcast. Wanted to go through some housekeeping items for this first podcast. I guess pilot, would you'd call it, for 2024 on something kind of new, hopefully engaging, growing throughout the year. But hopefully I don't get interrupted either while recording this. But I want to start with like a little bit of the outline for what the podcast it kind of entails, and that would be, you know, current event topics that may have occurred throughout the business, whether it be through the industry or through JBT. Sharing relevant news updates related to safety, catchy or thought-provoking things or anything that's new throughout the industry that we may be able to implement at JBT, right? So it could be, essentially going over recordable incidents, or it could be talking about new things that may be kind of enlightening, like AI, for example, and how we can gear our safety parameters around AI and leverage artificial intelligence to help us get to that next step, right? So for this first one, I wanted to kind of keep it basic, and I know we've had a lot of questions around OSHA record keeping requirements being, is the injury work related? Is that work related injury a recordable? What constitutes a recordable injury, lost time, restricted work, all that fun stuff. So I wanted to kind of break down, do a Cliff Notes version of that really in a nutshell, the best I can. So I know we're not going to have any questions and answers. I don't even know if this is probably going to be published or distributed yet, as this is the first time doing something like this. Again, this is it's a learning curve for sure. So something that maybe we do monthly, maybe do less, maybe do more frequent. Just really kind of just all depends. I don't even know how well it's picking up my sound. So one thing I can do is kind of jump into it, and what I'll do is I'll share my screen as well, and hopefully that records. May not. Here. All right, I think we're good. Nice. So I'll skip a lot of this stuff. This is a good OSHA a PowerPoint just to kind of gear the topics and keep us focused, but I'll try to make this as simple as possible. And again, this isn't going to be all ever, I don't want it to be dull topics every time, but I think this is a topic that I get a lot of questions on and people just don't understand, right? We can have a discussion on the difference between OSHA recordability and workers' comp, and you can go down that whole rabbit hole of workers' comp as well. But for right now, we're gonna work on really the first two right here, 1904.4 and .5, right? And this is CFR 1904.4.5. So recording criteria. So we got to start with recording criteria number one. What constitute as something that could be recorded, right? Covered employees must be recorded for each fatality, injury, or illness, right? It's pretty common, right? I don't expect anybody to memorize this stuff. It's stuff that I know. I think the big one here too is, right, is it work related, which we'll talk about, and does it meet one of the criteria to make it a recordable case, right? I think this is pretty well done with the 5-step process, right? These questions are good. I think doing any kind of decision trees or questions is always beneficial, right? Did the employee experience an injury or illness? Yes or no? If he did, right, is the injury or illness work related? If it is the injury or illness a new case, right? So you could have existing cases open with previously injured employees. Was that injury associated with that current case, or is it a new case? And if it is, associated with, if the injury is similar to maybe the old case, was the old case technically closed or was it open, right? So we may get in that a little bit deeper, but that's something that doesn't come up a whole lot within JBT, thank goodness. But it has in my past with some other incidents that I've covered. But we'll keep it simple. Does the injury or illness meet the general criteria or the application to specific cases, right? Is yes, record the injury or illness. And when we say record, we record it on the OSHA 300 log, right? Keep that there. We have a 300A log as well. All those get submitted. The 300A gets submitted annually to OSHA on each one of our sites. Hours worked, average head count, NACS code. We post it between well, technically now February 1st through April. So April 30th. So better get onto that. All right, so step one, I like this too because it gives you some examples. The employee experienced an injury or illness. Injury or illness is an abnormal condition or disorder, right? Injuries include cases such as, but not limited to, a cut, fracture, sprain, amputation, fatality, illnesses, chronic illnesses, could be cancer related, back to work related, poisonings, etc. So here's a good scenario. I'm going to go through each one of these scenarios, but I like a couple of these scenarios to do. So a worker reports to the nurse's station with a complaint of a painful wrist. Employee is given 2 Advil and returned to the job. Okay, stop here. Do we go on to the next step? Answer is go on to the next step. Why? Because, well, the painful wrist was injury experienced, right? So we need to figure out, okay, was the risk caused by something in the work environment? Is it an aggravation of a pre-existing injury? Right? If that's the case, it still doesn't matter if we aggravated it, the workplace, the work environment, his task aggravated it. It could still potentially be a recordable incident and an injury that needs to be documented, right? Whether it's a first aid, doesn't matter. Of course, with JBT, we want to record and document all injuries to be investigated to prevent any kind of reoccurrence. Let's see. I'm not gonna go through this scenario. That's a different one. So experienced injury illness. Yes, is injury illness work related, right? So we talked about work relatedness, right? Is presumed for injuries or illnesses resulting from events and exposures occurred in the work environment. The work environment. What is the work environment, right? There's standard interpretations of what the work environment is. But that's, up to us to kind of determine that, right? The employee parking lot, is that the work environment? Yeah, right. We maintain that parking lot for sure. It definitely is. If it's a travel status, what's work-related environment when someone's on travel status? We use a term travel status with OSHA, but we got service technicians that travel. What is the work environment and what is not whenever they're traveling on the behalf of the company, right? Work environment is defined as an establishment or location where one or more employees are working as or present as a condition of employment. So if you're at work, not on the condition of employment, voluntary purposes, non-work related, right, and you get hurt, it would not be work related. Again, from a record keeping criteria standpoint. Now, workers' comp and other legalities that go into that is definitely something separate that we look at. It's not only physical locations, but also the equipment materials used by the employees during the course of their work. So keep that in mind too. An aggravation of a pre-existing injury or illness, right? An event exposure in the work environment that resulted in maybe an aggravation. Maybe they have a some kind of health element that's known, right? And the task that we've assigned them to do aggravates that condition, where he needs to go to the hospital and receive prescription medications. That would be deemed as potentially work related, right? Most likely it would be. depending on what the investigation finds. But typically, if it's an exposure in the work environment that aggravated a pre-existing condition, whether you got that pre-existing condition, injury, illness from work or at home, it does not matter. Maybe you got a bad back, right? Maybe you hurt your back playing football years ago on the varsity team, right? And you pick something up and that disc finally lets go. You know, we had you pick that item up, we had you working in this area, it went, yes, it sucks, yeah. And then from that standpoint, it's recordable. And then from a workers' comp standpoint, we look at what percentage of that injury could be compensable, right? So that's a whole totally separate deal that I'm not going to get into. Take a lot longer than what we want to for this situation. So situations that aren't work related. This is a good one too. Hey, what is not is sometimes easier to figure out than what is. Definitely with OSHA, this is definitely the thing to highlight, right? General public, if you're present in the general public, symptoms arise in the work environment that are solely due to non-related events or exposures, right? That's black and white for sure, right? But maybe they arise in the work environment, but they're not solely due to work related. Maybe it's flu, right? Maybe you didn't woke up and you didn't feel good, and then you get to work and you are dehydrated, it's related to that illness, it's not work related, then yeah, that would be a good example. But hey, if you're sick, you're not feeling good, and then you faint because of that illness, and you smack your head at when you fainted, yeah, that injury from smacking your head would potentially be work related, most likely, and compensable. Voluntary participation, wellness program, medical, fitness, recreational. Pretty self-explanatory for ones. Eating, drinking, preparing food, or personal consumption. So if you bite your tongue while you're eating your lunch, no, that would not be recordable or work-related, or deemed work-related. Recordability status, we'll get to later on that. I know I'm kind of jumping ahead of the curve a little bit here. Personal tasks outside of the work hours, personal grooming, right? Self-medications, intentional self-inflicted, right? So we all take those into considerations. Motor vehicle accidents in the parking lot. So someone hits you in the parking lot, that wouldn't be necessarily something that the work environment contributed. It could be from that person, and then that would be with that employee or person that hit you and yourself, etc. Common cold, flu, kind of like what I mentioned earlier. Mental illness, unless employee voluntarily provides medical opinion from a physician, licensed healthcare professional, having appropriate qualifications to an experience that would affirm that it may be work, right? Maybe your work is so stressful that it gives you some kind of medical ailment. That's a rare occurrence where you're going to find a physician to maybe do that. Travel status, a good one, right? 1904.5 again, continuing here. Injury and illness that occurs while employees on travel status is work related if occurred while the employee was engaged in work activities in the interest of the employees, right? You go into a sales meeting, you're there to sell a piece of equipment on the behalf of the company. Something happens during that engagement, could potentially be work related, right? You get in a car wreck when you leave home to go to the job site on travel status, not your normal commute. If you commute to a actual brick and mortar location, but maybe you're a service technician or an apps person, you're going to, Tyson Berrysville, and you're driving there, or whatever, and something occurs before you make it to that location and establish your home away from home, which would be the hotel, then it would potentially be work related. Any questions with any of this stuff? Something would happen. Obviously, any injury occurs, notify your manager, your supervisor. Get with me, and we can, number one, make sure you're okay. Follow up with you. Make sure you get the right medical attention that is necessary, and then we can worry about the paperwork, the investigation, the preventive actions after the communication, stand downs, any of that nature later on. So a home away from home is established. Then from your home away from home to dinner, to your where you're going to employment, whether it be Tyson, whether it be McCain's, wherever it might be. Something happens during those two commute, that kind of commute would not be work related. A detour for personal reasons, maybe you're on your way home, you leave the site and you're going home, but on halfway through you got to make a pit stop over at your grandma's, right? From that point on, right, that is on you, personally related, not deemed from the work, so keep that clear. Um, so here's a good one. Employee gives blood to voluntary employee sponsored blood donation, passes out, loss of consciousness, right? Anytime you have a loss of consciousness, that's definitely reportable if it is work related. So is it work related? No. Why do we stop here? Well, because it is solely for voluntary participation in the wellness program or medical fitness, recreational, however they want to define it. So it's not work related, right? Employee sprains ankle in the company parking lot on his way to work is work related. It is. Go on. There's no exception that applies. The only exception for parking lots, walkways, things like that, um, would be if you got in a VI accident during the commute. um, Stuff in the parking lot where you have vehicle accidents, right, in your commute definitely would be. I know there's some streets that are maintained in our businesses by the cities that we do business in. So working with them, making sure those are maintained, and us making sure that we provide a safe working and healthy environment for our employees is critical, and everybody does their role in that kind of situation. Employee slips and falls in the hallway, breaking the arm while working on daughter's science project on Saturday's employee's day off. Maybe he was even doing it here at work, right? It's not work related. He's here solely as a personal task, personal reason. So it wouldn't be work related. So is it a new case? I'm not going to go through the new case point. That's something that happens, but we look at it, right? That's usually, hey, they finish their physical therapy, they're released, they're back on the normal job function. It's been a couple of days, weeks afterwards, and they get injured, and it's a similar body part, same body part, right? It could be a new case, so it would be two recordables for that one employee. But if they are on light duty still and they're still doing physical therapy, right, and they hurt or re-aggravated, it should just be, going back on that previous case. So if you have questions about this later on, let me know. Uh, Again, first time doing this, probably going a lot quicker than I feel like. So if you got questions, let me know. Comments, anything, definitely let me know. Does the injury or illness meet the general criteria or application to be to the specified specific case, right? So we're going to look at the record keeping criteria, right? Was there days missed, right? Were the days missed because we put them off work or the doctor put them off work? Regardless of who puts them off work, it would be a lost time, right? So that's why it was time we go off the physician's discretion. Maybe we get a second opinion on a minor injury that they maybe want days off work for, but that would be involved recording that. I'm not going to get into the standpoint of how you record days away or what day you count it. I mean, you could probably read it right there in the slides, right? But even if we say, hey, we can't accommodate the employee on the restriction, he needs to be off for a week. We can't do anything with him. If we put him off work, JBT puts him off work, it would still be recorded as a lost time incident, right? So restricted work cases, the case involves one or more days of restricted work. Again, what is restricted work? I don't know if it's defined in here yet. I think it is defined in here. Unable to work a full work day, or he or she is otherwise to be scheduled to perform one or more routine job functions. So what are routine job functions? This is activities the employee or employees regularly perform at least once per week, right? So a lot of this is on us to be able to decipher this, investigate, and record the case as ethically as possible. It can get pretty tough, right? It's good to have job descriptions. It's good to get other people involved. Like, okay, hey, so Johnny has to sit Can he do his normal work function, routine work function while sitting? If he can, that's great. It's probably not a restricted work necessarily by the recording criteria. But if Johnny has to stand to be able to operate this machine, can't do it while sitting, or we job transfer, which is another thing, right, which required, kind of fitting that restricted work criteria, then we would have to record it as such. So a case is not recordable under 1904.7 as restricted work case. Employee experiences minor, musculoskeletal discomfort. A healthcare professional determines that the employee is fully able to perform one or her job functions. The employee assigned to the work restriction of the employee for that purpose of preventing a more serious condition from developing, right? So again, those things are all outlined in there. Job transfer is similar, right? So we transfer them out of that role, restricted duty role, into something a little bit more, right? We see that a lot. If we have a lost time instance, they come back, they can't quite go back to their normal jobs. We transfer him to a lighter duty job until he is fully healed, right? So that is a good thing about that. Medical treatment. So what is medical treatment? So if it's beyond first aid measures, we go to OSHA other recordable, what they would define that. So again, on these slides, you go from worst case scenario to the most minor case, right? Lost time, fatality, lost time, dismemberment, right? To restricted work, to job transfer, to now just medical treatment. So medical treatment doesn't include just solely observation or counseling, right? Maybe hey, I want to seek medical attention, but they just observe them, give them, a little bit of diagnosis of what could be going on, and then administer some type of what OSHA deems as first aid, right? Which we'll get into this a little bit more. So first aid, maybe it's non-prescription medication, non-prescription strength, right? So we got to be mindful that they could still say, hey, take non-prescription medication, but it's at prescription strength. It would still be ethically a recordable. Tetanus immunizations, right? That's preventative. Clean flushing, soaking, wound coverings, butterfly bandages, hot and cold therapy, right? Ice packs, heating pads, non-rigid means of support. So we've had a wrist injury, right? Maybe the splint that he gets is a rigid splint and not a soft splint, like an athletic splint. If it's a rigid splint, it's recordable. If it's a soft splint, it is not, right? So temporary immobilization devices, transport accident victims, right, could potentially be beyond medical treatment. Typically, if you're going to be on a stretcher, it's probably going to be a little bit more than first aid from the care that you may receive at the hospital or clinic that you go to. I hate to go through all of these, but might as well. Drill in the fingernail, toenail, blister, right, to drain fluid. Eye patches, right, maybe you get something in your eye, you flush it out. Maybe they flush it out continually at the doctor. They give you an eye patch, removing foreign bodies from the eye, right? That can be through irrigation or cotton swabs. You gotta remember that. Myself personally, I've had something in my eye and have had it removed through irrigation. It is not comforting at all. So obviously recommend safety goggles, glasses, face shields whenever you're doing tasks that require such PPE. Removing splinters for material from the areas other than by irrigation, tweezers, cotton swabs, or other simple means, right? So finger guards, massages, drinking fluids for relief of heat stress. Okay. Loss of consciousness. All work-related cases involving loss of consciousness must be recorded. I already mentioned that. Significant diagnosis of injury or illness. This is your chronic stuff. This is your hearing loss. If you're in a hearing conservation program and you do annual audiograms, and I might get questions on this too, which is fine. I can answer you that. Annual audiograms are important because they take your baseline and each year they base your score on your baseline. And if there's a 10% more drop in your rating. It could be it would be a recordable, but it could also have long-term effects, right? There's other, asbestos, fracture, cracked bones or teeth, anything that may be, any fracture, whether how they treat it or not, is a fracture and it's recordable. It's one thing to mention. So, an injury or illness is recordable if it meets the recording criteria for one of the following: bloodborne pathogens, medical removal, hearing loss, tuberculosis. Yes, bloodborne pathogens. I am not going to go through the rest of this because I don't think it's necessarily needed. But again, these are a little bit more extreme cases that they have their own regulation in with medical removal. Yeah, so pretty self-explanatory on that. Hearing loss, same thing. Tuberculosis, another thing. So yeah, record the injury or illness. There's your log. There's your 300 log. So we do this digitally right through Process Map. I'm glad I don't have to do the paper log. So Process Map does all that for you. That's why the more information you get, the better. Checks all the boxes, starts your counts on your days. Which if you have a lost time incident, you don't count the day that the lost time occurred of the date of the injury. You count the next day. It doesn't matter if it's a weekend, holiday. You can get into that mess too. Okay, is it a lost time if the employee is off work, but he got hurt on a Friday and he's allowed to return back to work on a Monday? Yeah, it's a lost time. He still could potentially be scheduled, right? There's always that potential to work. He's off those days. Ethically, you should record that. You got any questions on that? I'm be happy to deliberate. Your 301 log, which we do as well, but that's just an incident report, which gets all automatically filled out when we do your process map report. And then your 300-day is your annual log that you receive, right? So again, this should be posted from February 1st, which is today, through April 30th. And then from then you can take it down. So today's April 1st. I should follow up and make sure things are being posted. And it gives your number of cases, number of days away, number of days of restricted duty, and how many injuries, illnesses, skin disorders, etc. that you had, and any other information that you may possibly want. So again, recording cases must be within a certain criteria, a certain amount of days, versus privacy protections, multiple businesses. We're not going to cover any of that in this slide, but this is pretty good. I will try to save this and post these slides. Anybody that's going through like an OSHA 10, OSHA 30 would go through a lot of this stuff for detail. Of course, retention we don't have to worry about since we have process map now. Employee involvement, discrimination, right? All that stuff is in here in the Code of Federal Regulations, for what CFR stands for. So it is law. So in that case, I will wrap this up and tell you about the next meeting, which I'm not sure what it will be, but it will be something a little bit more enjoyable to talk about than OSHA recorder record keeping criteria and work relatedness. Hopefully it's something more positive. Maybe it will be a training related topic. Maybe it's about the new training system that we're going to roll out with the Shabo. Regardless what it is, I'll make sure it's more entertaining than this first one. Again, if whatever time of day you happen to click on this and review this and watch this, I hope you have a good rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, night, and we'll see and talk to you later. Thanks.